What's up guys, Old Sono here. Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we have a locomotive that completes the Union Pacific Big Three. And I don't even have to introduce this thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. It is the Union Pacific 844, and we have basically what it looked like from like the 1990s all the way up to 2010, I believe. And we have the version in all black with the Mars light, and it looks outstanding. It looks gorgeous. Now this is an Athearn model. I know the Broadway Limited model came out, but because of the price I paid for this thing, I couldn't resist. And also, it's gorgeous. It's after now, of course, being one of my engines, it is not stock, which you could probably tell by the marker lights. But we're gonna take a look at this engine, and it is much better. It is very detailed. It is strong. Yeah, it is what the. I am lost for words. I'm finally happy to have one of these now. But yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at this thing. Alright, so before we take a look at the details on the Athearn one and some specs on the Athearn one, we're going to take a nice history lesson on the UP844. So 844 is a 484 Northern type steam locomotive built by Alco for the Union Pacific. This is the third iteration of this locomotive, which means it is an FEF3. That is what 844 is. It's a FEF3 484 Northern. Now, FEF actually does stand for 484, and a 3 indicates this is the third batch that was delivered in 1944. And the first batch was for class FEF1 from numbers 800 to 819, built in 1937. And the second batch, which was class FEF2, which I forget the build date for those, but those were numbered 820 through 834. And of course, the FEF3s, built and delivered in 1944, were numbered 835 through 844, and 844 is what we have right here. Now 844 served all the way up from 1944 to now, which if you know anything about this locomotive, it was never retired. The locomotive had a very long working career. It was converted to oil in 1946. The locomotive gained smoke deflectors and a Mars light shortly after its delivery. FEFs could be seen in freight and passenger duty. 844 did both. There's actually a video of 844 helping a CSA 2 class Challenger with a freight train. This locomotive is very, very well known and very, very popular, as it is the one and only Class 1 steam engine to never be retired from a Class 1 railroad. It is the best steam engine that Union Pacific's probably ever operated, considering that it's never been retired, and it's made so many different photo charters and rail fan excursions. So 844 is a national treasure, basically. Pretty much at this point, it is a national landmark. A landmark on wheels, for that matter. But anyway, this locomotive has served in excursion service all the way up from 1959 all the way up to now. So this locomotive can still be seen in excursions today. The last time this locomotive operated was in 2019, when it ran the 4014 to Promontory and back. The locomotive has not ran since 2019, but I hope to see it on the rails again. I don't think anything's wrong with it. I think it just hasn't been ran because the big boy is back in service. But anyways, that's the 844 for you. And this is basically the best friend of one of my favorite 484, the 4449. I can't wait to have another 4449, an MTH model, so that way I can finally have the duo reunited. Even though I can finally have the UP triple header that I've been dying to create. Now, the one downside with this model is that this thing still has Tsunami 1, because I bought it used. Actually, before I got this thing, it hasn't been ran in almost 10 years. So, that's one surprising thing, and it runs still very quietly, for I haven't been run in 10 years. So, that's a surprise. But, anyways, yes. So anyway, we're going to take a nice look at the details on this thing. Starting, well, right now. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit. So I'm going to point out some differences that differentiates this thing between the different variants of FEF locomotives. So on the Pilot, of course, I can show you one. This has a swing-out coupler instead of a fold-up coupler, which the FEF 1s and 2s had. So you have a cast Pilot, just like the big boys and the Challengers. Swing-out coupler. In this case, I have a McHenry coupler mounted on the front until I can put a KD on the front. This will have to do. Coupler cut bar. You have your air pump shield. You have your handrails going up to the boiler. You have your headlight, your number boards on the side of the headlight. You have your Mars light, your bell, number boards, marker lights. I still need to do some touch-up paint to those, actually. And yeah, marker lights are here. Default, these do not light. Mine will light in this video, and my number boards are a different color because I changed the LEDs to a different color to make it look better. But yeah. Oh, it's just some flashing. Anyways, you have your smoke deflectors, which can be detached by clips. They're not very easy to detach, but they can be if you wanted to. The best part is that they don't have any screw holes on the walkway, which will become pretty noticeable if you decide to take them off on a Broadway model or the Reverosity models. Feed water heater up here, which is painted black, pretty nicely done. And I think I already talked about the coupler cut bar, but yeah. Yeah, so that's that. Let's take a look at the engineer side first. Of course, you have your smoke deflectors, which block everything that is behind it. You have a builder's plate behind here, behind the smoke deflectors on the smoke box. You have throttle linkage, more piping. You have some steps on the side of the boiler. You have your plastic handrails, your plastic throttle linkage. Let's take a look at the valve gear real quick, which I glanced over. You have your valve gear, which your cylinders right here. All the 80-inch drive gear, linkages, and rods and so forth. Your reverse gear right here, which connects over here. Centric cranks and everything. Crank pins, rods. The rods that connect the wheels together. This is all one long piece, which some models might not point out, but this is all one long piece. And something you might also notice on these is that the crank pins are longer than what they should be. That is true, but they're like that for a reason. They're like that so that way the locomotive can have a little bit more side-to-side play and go around a little bit sharper curves. So the rods will go out a little bit farther, so that way they can go around those sharper curves. If your track was absolutely perfect, and if you really wanted to, you could take these all out and you put regular crank pins in. But I don't recommend doing that. I would recommend probably just leaving these in so you can still get around those sharper curves, because it doesn't really compromise operation or looks very much. You have a traction tire on the very last driver, and this last driver is the geared axle. So this axle drives everything. Moving back, we have the firebox. This is an oil burner, so there is no ash pan. You have stable detailing. You have this little thing. I'm not sure what that's for. More piping. Part of reverse gear up here going back to the cab. You have some piping down here. You have this piece, which I'm not sure what that's for. Probably support for the firebox in the cab. You have your trailing truck, which is pretty nicely done. Silver bearing caps like it should be. And these are Temkin roller bearings on the real thing. By the way, their whole engine, the real thing is a roller bearing engine. It doesn't have roller bearing rods, but it has all roller bearings on the axles. You have 844 on the side of the cab. You have some signage underneath. FEF and FEF-80, I believe is what that says. Right here. That equates the class and the driver diameter. And the 226, which means there's 226,000 pounds right over the drivers. Opening cab windows, which they're pretty hard to open, so I'm not going to bother with it. Very nicely detailed cab. This tread plate would actually flip up and down, but because mine broke off in shipping, it will not flip up and down, so I just glued it into place, and it doesn't compromise any operation. On the back of the cab, you have a opening cab door, which, if I can see what I'm doing, There we go. The door opens. Pretty nice. My engine will be getting a cab light as well, so that would be pretty nice to see. It'll also get a firebox light in the cab instead of on the trailing truck, but that's still to be determined. It will also get running lights on the side, just like the real thing. We're gonna turn this engine around. And this engine has a pretty good weight for being plastic. It's picking it up, it has a pretty good weight, but the engine's boiler is plastic, and so is the underframe. It's plastic like the underneath of the boiler, but that's okay because the engine does have a good weight, and it still pulls a lot. I was impressed at how well this thing pulls for being plastic. But then again, it has traction tires, so that's nice. I don't know why Bachmann doesn't give you that option, but they don't. Anyways, 844, same legible signage on the other side. Railings are right above the cab. A cab roof vent that does open. It'll stay open. That's cool. There's a popsicle inside, a popsicle antenna right here for the radio and PTC bull crap. More piping coming back from the underneath the cab. There's the steam-driven turbine pump right here for the water. The cold water pump, AK, is what it's also called. So it goes up here, all the way up to here through those pipes. Behind the smoke deflectors, you can see that detailing as well. We're going to come back to this piece in a minute. We'll talk about what that part's for in a minute. Goes all the way up here, behind the smoke deflectors, and goes right on top into the feed water heater, which is the exhaust feed water heater, where it basically gets its heat. The water heats up through the exhaust, and after the water has been heated to set temperature, it'll come back down to here. It'll come back down from to here through this pipe into here, which is the hot water pump, which is a piston type pump, which will ram that water into the boiler against the PSI, with a piston type pump. So that's how the water gets into the boiler for this engine. There is a documentary that probably explained it a little bit better than I did, actually by the man himself, Steve Lee. Miss Steve Lee, bring him back. But yeah. Anyways, going back to the front, that is that. But let's take a look at the top real quick. So of course we have a Hancock 3-chime UP whistle. There's a whistle pointed for 844, pointed at that iconic angle, which looks really, really nice. We have this. I'm actually not sure what this piece is for on the FEF. I know a lot about the FES, but that is something I'm not sure what this is for. Probably something for the throttle, or something for water maybe. I think it's probably for the throttle, but I'm not sure. You got your combined sand and steam dome. You have your safety valves. You have your dual dynamos, just like the real thing. You have your turret covers. And you have your steps on the side of the boiler. And probably can't see too well, but you have your boiler cleanout plugs on the side. So those are really nice. They're black, so it's pretty hard to see. On the real thing, they're silver. But yeah, that's that. So one thing I will talk about in terms of the specs on this engine for performance, you got a 5-pole skew wound motor with dual flywheels. You have roller bearings and sprung drivers on this locomotive, so that's a really nice thing. Pretty much 3 of my Northerns have sprung drivers and roller bearings. You have this, my GS4 from MTH, and soon the next review to come out will be my Reading T1. Those all have sprung drivers and roller bearings, which is pretty nice. That's a quality mechanism. Bachmann needs to, hop on the bandwagon with quality. But yeah, that's that. So let's take a look at the tender and get this out the way. And here's the tender. Now this is basically modeling 844 before the Ed Dickens era, and also kind of, I guess, before the Excursion era, because if you notice something about this tender, you might notice already that one, it's not complete. The tender itself isn't completely accurate for the steam era. I'm sorry, for the Excursion era, because, well, it's pretty obvious from the back. There is no backup light. Yeah, this is basically 844's tender in the 1950s. And the 1950s tenders did not have a backup light, or at least most of them didn't. They just had this red backup light, which Athearn models this as a orangish light, or like a really crappy color. It's not supposed to be orange or white or whatever. It's supposed to be red. This light up here is supposed to be red, and they gave that the wrong color. I made mine red. It still has some light bleed, which I will fix later, of course, because I'm going to be heavily modifying this engine. And I'm probably going to be weathering the top of the tender as well. So that's that. But anyways, let's take a look at the tender. So of course, from the back, you got your coupler cut lever. You have a air hose, a coupler, which comes with a McHenry stock, but this has a KD scale coupler. You got your ladders on the side. You have your railings up here. You have that red light I was talking about. You have your water hatches. This is I think this is some oily residue. I'm not sure what that is. Probably a glue mark, but I'm not sure. Either way, that can be fixed pretty easily with some weathering, which this will all probably get weathered rust and grime. The tender back here, this will all get rust for sure. And up here, the oiled section, which looks pretty good. It's not the most accurate thing, but it's alright. Right here, we'll probably get some grime and rust, maybe. But yeah. Another thing that's inaccurate on both the FEF Big Boy and Challenger tenders that are oil burners. Every oil tender Athearn has made has been incorrect in one way or another. Of course, the top and the back of the FEFs are... The top, back, and front of the FEF tenders are pretty much wrong. For the excursion versions, at least. For the oil tenders, at least. The Athearn's oil tenders I've always had with this one major flaw, and that was the front. There's supposed to be a box here at the front, which Athearn still has not done, even on their latest run of Big Boys, and probably they're not going to do that on their latest run of Challengers and FEFs. But yeah, there's supposed to be some... I'm assuming it's maybe an electrical box or a sandbox. I'm not sure for sure. But there's supposed to be a box here on the front. And of course on the FEF, like I pointed out, there's supposed to be a backup light, which there was not. But yeah, those are just the things that you might not have noticed. But yeah, so that's the tender. And I hope you enjoyed this review of the FEF in terms of the details. So let's go and take a look at this thing running and the lights that I did to the front so far. I'm still not finished with the lights because I still have some work to do on this engine, like the running lights and a firebox and a cab light, and then of course a Locksound 5 decoder and some better speakers. But other than that, it's pretty decent. But anyways, let's go take a look at this thing. And I'm real quick, I think I've shown it in the Challengers video multiple times, and probably people have known about this, but I'm going to show you how to connect the thing. So of course you have your 6-pin connector. On the new run is upgraded to an 8-pin. I will actually be doing a tutorial at some point how to get 2 functions out of a 6-pin wire setup, how to get 2 lighting functions out of a 6-pin setup. So of course you connect your plug into the plug on the tender, which sometimes can be hard to see and line up, which, give me a moment, I think I got it. No, I didn't, not all the way. Okay, hold on. There we go, I got it. So yeah, you get your plug all the way in there, and then you have your C-clamp, make sure it's centered, and just push it together. And I have a tender connected. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this on the track, and let's take a nice look at this thing in action. Okay, so we're here with the 844, and of course we have the UP Trio out today. So we have 4014. This is a BLI model. That's the cold version. Here is 3985, which is an Athearn Genesis. And of course here is the 844. So 844, as you can probably tell, is bright as hell. I still need to turn the lights down. They are very, very bright. That's for sure. But yeah, I need to turn the lights down, but that's of course going to have to wait until I can get a decoder for this engine, so I can turn that all down with the Locksound decoder. or probably just to replace the resistors on the marker lights with some lower, with some higher tolerance ones. But headlight looks really good. Instead of having the light tube that looks horrible when this thing was on, I just glued a surface mount LED right to the back of the lens, which looks so much nicer. And of course, I did the same thing for the Mars light, which looks a whole lot better. Did the same thing, glued a surface mount right to the back of the lens. Looks a whole lot better. So yeah, that's that. Anyways, I really like how this thing runs. It's very smooth. The lights look really, really good. I can't wait to turn those marker lights down. I might do that to 3985, but I probably won't because they're actually pretty good. I'm kind of happy with that brightness. But yeah, 844 for sure is going to get its turned down because the decoder is going to be in the boiler. But anyways, let's go ahead and run this thing, and then probably gonna run with the big boy and the Challenger in a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this thing running.
Reach for the speed, reach for the whistle, go where the rail may run. Reach for the words, reach for the story, follow the rainbow sun. To a shining time station, where dreams can come true, waiting there